Today I'm going to show you how to achieve a stretchier cast-on for socks. This is probably the #1 fit issue that sock knitters have. As always, if you'd like to jump directly to a specific point in the video, there are direct links down in the description. So why is a stretchy cast-on a particularly difficult issue for sock knitters? Well, the reason is that a sock has to fit snugly around the two smallest circumferences, the ball of foot and the ankle, but it also has to stretch by 50% in order to accommodate the largest circumferences, which are the heel diagonal and the top of the sock where it surrounds the mid-calf circumference. That means if you have a sock that's 8 inches in circumference, it needs to be able to stretch to 12 inches in order to get past your heel and stay on your leg around your calf. This means your cast-on also has to be able to stretch to accommodate those large circumferences, and it needs to do so without cutting off your circulation. Now, in most cases, you don't need a different stretchier cast-on. What you need is to learn how to adapt your existing cast-on so that it is stretchier. I'm going to demonstrate two commonly used cast-ons, the long-tail cast-on and the cable cast-on, and show you the reasons why those edges can end up too tight and what you can do to make those edges much stretchier so that they are suitable for a sock. So let's get started. So I have two pretend socks here that I cast on for using the same number of stitches and on the same needles using the same yarn. I knit this one with the long tail cast on tightly the way I used to knit before I started knitting socks. And then I knit this one using the long tail cast on using the method I currently use, which gives me a lot more stretch. So if you look at this one, you can see how the cast on edge pulls in, and if I try to stretch this, I can stretch it only this far. The edge is very rigid. The ribbing would continue to stretch above that, but the edge itself won't stretch. With this one, I can pull it out completely. I can just keep pulling it out pretty much as far as the ribbing will stretch, the edge will stretch. Now, when this one I tried putting on my foot, I couldn't get it past the arch of my foot, nowhere near the heel. This one I had no trouble getting over my heel and all the way up my calf. So these socks are both knit to be as if it were a 7-inch circumference sock. This one I could get past my 12-inch heel diagonal and around my 11-inch mid-calf, and this one I could not. I think the most it would stretch was about 9.5 inches. So that's the difference between a tight and a loose cast-on. So when you look at relaxed knitting that's just sitting on the needles, you can see that there are spaces between the stitches, and that's what you want to see on a cast-on as well. So this is an appropriately stretchy long-tail cast-on. The stitches are spaced out along the edge, and you can even see a little bit of gap underneath the stitches. The way I used to cast on, which is too tight, is I would make a stitch and then I would tighten it up as much as I do that little dance like that, and then I do the next stitch and I tighten it up, and I would continue doing that because I wanted them all nice and neat and next to each other. Now, the problem with that is that, first of all, there's no space between them, so there's no way for them to stretch. You can see how tight they are in the needle. I really have to push them to get them to move. The other problem is that it makes working the first row or round after the cast on a real nightmare because it's impossible to get the working needle into those stitches. They're so tight on the needle. So the cast on stitches need to be just like they were actual stitches for any other row or round on the needle and be able to move easily along. So in order to be able to cast on loosely, you have to change your muscle memory. So it's going to take some effort and concentration for a while until you develop new muscle memory. So one thing that you can do is put your finger on the needle in front of the last stitch that was cast on. So as you cast on, your finger is in the way. It does not allow this new stitch to get near the other one. So that gives you a clue when you need to stop tightening the loop under the yarn or under the needle. Then you can move your finger and you cast on the next one so that you're forcing yourself to provide space for those stitches, and it forces you to keep those loose. Now again, as you're developing this muscle memory, your stitches are probably going to be kind of uneven. You're not going to have a perfectly even edge the way I have here, and that's okay. Now, when I used to do the cable cast on, I had a similar problem of over tightening stitches. So as I got this tail in the way, but we can ignore it. So I would pull my stitch through, I'd give it a nice big loop, I put it on the needle, and then I would tighten it up before I would stick my needle through those two stitches, and that made it very difficult. It was so tight, it was really hard to get that in there, and it made it very frustrating and tedious to work the cable cast on, and it also made it very tight. So instead, what you can do is you pull your loop through, you can make it as big as you want, and put it on the needle. Stick your needle in now in between the two stitches, and then tighten up a little bit. This will force those stitches to be as wide as the needle is wide, and it will force the stitch to have a little space under the needle as well. So that automatically introduces more stretch than you would have gotten if you tightened the stitch first. So you leave it loose on the needle, then you stick your needle through, and then you tighten. And if you want an edge that's even stretchier, since nothing is ending up on this needle, this is just a spacing needle. So you can use a bigger needle. This is a size 7 needle and this is a size 9. So I can use a size 9 needle to make these cast on stitches. That makes the needle a little bit wider and a little bit deeper, so that provides even more stretch. And because nothing is ending up on the needles, it's not a problem. Nothing is ending up on this needle. I could stick it through, and this will just make these even looser. So you can do this for the cable cast on. I don't recommend using larger needles for the long tail cast on. You don't end up making a stretchier edge. The edge may be somewhat larger in circumference, but it's not going to be any stretchier if you haven't overcome your over tightening problems. Now, you may be using a different cast on method than one of the two that I demonstrated, but most likely you will be able to use those tips to help you make your cast on edge stretchier, whether it's by avoiding over tightening the cast on loops as they go on the needle, or by making sure that you're allowing enough space between your cast on stitches, which will then allow it to have more stretch. If you have any comments or questions about today's video, you can leave those down in the comments below, or you can join me over in my Ravelry group, Rocks. There's a link to that down in the description. I'll be uploading more videos in the next several weeks to solve your sock fitting issues. In the meantime, if you'd like to see some of my other cast-on videos, you can click on a playlist there, or you can look at my other sock-related videos in the playlist down there. Now, if you're not already subscribed to my channel, I'd really love it if you did subscribe. You can hover over my face here and click on the subscribe button. Don't click on it if you're already subscribed. That'll unsubscribe you. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next week.